Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts. So, today we are examining three primary developments across the maritime sector. First, Carnival Cruise Line has initiated construction on a record-breaking 230,000 gross ton vessel in Italy. Second, the Port of Galveston's Terminal 16 has secured a LEED Silver environmental certification following a massive redevelopment project. And finally, we will review a new study out of the University of Southampton that examines the localized air quality impacts of cruise emissions, specifically looking at lung cellular function.
Right, and we'll begin with the sheer scale of modern shipbuilding. Construction has officially commenced on the new Carnival Destiny over at Fincantieri's Monfalcone shipyard in Italy.
This marks the beginning of what Carnival is designating its new Ace class of ships, right?
Exactly. The current timeline places the Carnival Destiny's debut in the summer of 2029, and it will be followed by two additional Ace-class ships, currently scheduled for delivery in 2031 and 2033.
And at roughly 230,000 gross tons, the vessel is planned to be the largest ship ever built by Fincantieri.
Right, and by extension, that makes it the largest cruise ship ever constructed in Italy.
The name Carnival Destiny, it carries a lot of historical weight for anyone who follows maritime engineering. The original Carnival Destiny, which launched back in 1996, was a major milestone because it was the first passenger ship in the world to cross the 100,000 gross ton threshold.
Yeah, and now, just over 3 decades later, they were reviving the name for a ship that is more than double that volume.
Exactly. I mean, the 1996 ship had a standard capacity of 2,642 passengers. This 2029 new build is going to feature more than 3,000 cabins, which pushes its full occupancy capacity to over 8,000 guests. You were talking about moving the population of a small town across the ocean in a single hull.
Well, that exponential growth in passenger volume fundamentally changes how a ship operates, both mechanically and architecturally.
Yeah.
You cannot simply build a larger version of a 1996 vessel. The physics and really the internal logistics require entirely different paradigms.
Right, like the fuel system. Carnival and Fincantieri have confirmed the Ace class will be powered by liquefied natural gas, or LNG.
Yes, and moving to LNG requires massive, specialized fuel tanks that take up significantly more internal volume than traditional heavy fuel oil tanks.
Which forces naval architects to completely rethink the layout of the lower decks.
Exactly, and it seems that rethinking extends to the passenger areas as well. The design brief for the Ace class is explicitly focused on outward-facing spaces. The architecture incorporates more than 4.5 acres of glass across the vessel, including these massive multi-story glass walls.
The stated goal there is to open sightlines across more of the ship. When you have a vessel carrying 8,000 people, a common engineering challenge is preventing the interior from feeling like a crowded, enclosed shopping mall.
Right, so utilizing that much glass, expanding the ocean view balcony cabins, and completely redesigning the lanai deck, it's essentially a structural strategy to distribute the passenger load more evenly by drawing people out to the perimeter of the ship.
That distribution is critical. Furthermore, Carnival noted that over 70% of the venues and attractions on board covering dining, bars, lounges, entertainment will be entirely new concepts for the brand.
Because when you increase capacity to this level, you have to create enough distinct microenvironments to prevent bottlenecks. You are essentially engineering crowd control through venue diversity.
During the steel cutting ceremony, which included a 3D hologram preview of the ship, Carnival Cruise Line President Christine Duffy outlined the corporate strategy behind this new class. I have her direct quote right here. She stated, "With this steel cutting, we begin construction on a new class of ships for Carnival Cruise Line, which we are officially calling Ace class. Carnival Destiny builds on a legacy that changed cruising once before, reimagining what guests can experience at sea. With this ship, we're elevating the guest experience again, creating a ship that feels more expansive, while helping guests feel more connected and ultimately have more fun."
Yeah, and the logistics of actually building this class highlight a major industrial partnership. That steel-cutting event served as a recognition of a 30-year operational relationship between Carnival and Fincantieri.
Right. Over that period, Fincantieri has delivered 76 ships across Carnival Corporation's various brands,
with 15 of those specifically for Carnival Cruise Line. And the executive presence at the ceremony reflected the immense capital investment required for a project of this scale.
Right. You had Carnival Corporation CEO Josh Weinstein, board chairman Mickey Arison, and Duffy,
alongside top Fincantieri leadership, including Chairman Biagio Mazzata and CEO Pierroberto Folgiero, as well as Luigi Matarazzo, General Manager of Fincantieri's Merchant Ships Division, and Cristiano Bizzarra, the director of the Monfalcone shipyard.
Looking at where this 8,000-passenger ship will actually sail, Carnival has announced the 2029 Carnival Destiny will serve destinations in what they call the Paradise Collection.
Which is their portfolio of exclusive, company-controlled destinations in the Caribbean, the Bahamas, and Mexico.
The specific ports of call listed include Celebration Key on Grand Bahama, Isla Tropical at Mahogany Bay in Roatan, and Relaxaway at Half Moon Cay.
Right. While the exact inaugural itinerary, the home port, and the booking dates are expected later this year, likely in November, the deployment strategy makes perfect logistical sense.
It does, because when you are managing an 8,000-passenger vessel, standard municipal ports often struggle to handle the sudden influx of foot traffic, transportation demands, and shoreside services.
Exactly. By routing the Ace class to purpose-built, line-owned destinations like Celebration Key, Carnival maintains total control over the operational environment and the guest experience, ensuring the shoreside infrastructure actually matches the scale of the ship.
And that concept of infrastructure scale brings us directly to our second story. It is one thing to build a ship capable of holding 8,000 people. It is an entirely different logistical challenge to get those people and their luggage from their cars onto a vessel in a matter of hours without creating massive traffic gridlock or environmental degradation.
Right, and Galveston, Texas has been actively solving this problem. The Port of Galveston's Cruise Terminal 16 has just achieved LEED Silver certification from the U.S. Green Building Council.
Galveston Wharves successfully certified Terminal 16 under the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design program. The specific terminal was developed to expand the port's berthing capacity, initially accommodating MSC cruises.
With Norwegian Cruise Line scheduled to follow, yeah. What is particularly noteworthy from a civil engineering perspective is how they approached the build. Instead of undertaking a traditional ground-up construction project, they utilized adaptive reuse.
So they converted an existing complex of former cargo warehouses into the new 165,000 square foot passenger terminal.
Yes, and by doing so, they retained and reused approximately 85% of the existing structural elements.
Which, from an environmental standpoint, is a massive reduction in what we call embodied carbon. Right? Embodied carbon refers to the greenhouse gas emissions generated by the manufacturing, transportation, and assembly of new building materials.
Right, so by keeping the warehouse skeletons intact, they avoided the massive carbon footprint associated with pouring entirely new concrete foundations and forging new steel frameworks. It is essentially industrial-scale recycling.
And they managed that structural retention while still hitting the rigorous operational metrics required for a modern cruise hub. The terminal is engineered to process up to 5,000 passengers simultaneously.
To support that throughput, they integrated a newly constructed 7-story parking garage that accommodates more than 1,600 vehicles.
Alongside new passenger boarding bridges designed to handle the simultaneous embarkation and debarkation flows essential for quick vessel turnarounds.
Achieving LEED Silver requires scoring between 50 and 59 points on the USGBC rating system, which means the facility has to perform efficiently long after the construction phase.
So the port implemented highly energy-efficient building systems and water-saving fixtures throughout the terminal. They also minimized the overall parking footprint to reduce the urban heat island effect, which is crucial in the Texas climate.
Yeah, they implemented water-efficient landscaping, and they deliberately engineered the outdoor lighting to reduce light pollution and impacts on local nocturnal wildlife.
We should point out the broader context of Galveston's infrastructure modernization, too. Terminal 16 is now the port's second LEED-certified cruise terminal. Cruise Terminal 10, which serves Royal Caribbean, currently holds LEED Gold, which requires 60 or more points, as well as LEED Zero Energy and LEED Zero Carbon certifications.
Right. Additionally, Galveston Wharves recently received its Green Marine recertification for a 5th consecutive year. Green Marine is a voluntary maritime environmental program requiring annual self-evaluation against specific environmental indicators, mandatory public disclosure of results, and independent external verification every 2 years.
Port Director and CEO Roger Rees cited this recertification as validation of the port's ongoing work to improve local air quality and reduce waterfront waste.
He also noted that the port worked closely alongside Bermello Agumil and Partners and Hensel Phelps to deliver the Terminal 16 complex on time and on budget.
From a business perspective, Terminal 16 provides the port's massive 46 million person drive market with new sailing options, meeting the industry's need for future growth.
Looking at the deployment timeline, MSC Cruises holds a 20-year concession for Terminal 16, running from 2025 through 2045. The facility officially opened its doors on November 7, 2025, accommodating the arrival of the MSC Seascape.
And Norwegian Cruise Line will begin utilizing the terminal later this year, in December 2026. The economic metrics driving this physical expansion are just staggering.
Yeah.
Passenger movements at the Port of Galveston are forecasted to reach 3.9 million in 2026. Just for context on how rapidly this sector is growing, that figure was 1.9 million in 2017. The port currently operates as the fourth busiest cruise home port in North America, maintaining 4 active terminals.
Based on the latest full-year data from 2023, cruise operations generated $733 million in local business revenue for Galveston. The sector supported 4,547 jobs in the area and contributed $25 million in state and local taxes.
Year-round operations are supported by Carnival, MSC Cruises, and Royal Caribbean, with additional seasonal deployments from Disney Cruise Line and Norwegian Cruise Line. But while port authorities in places like Galveston are investing heavily in green building standards for their shoreside infrastructure, the vessels themselves present a much more complex emissions challenge, particularly when they are running at berth in major population centers.
Right.
Which brings us to our final story. Researchers at the University of Southampton in the United Kingdom have published a study linking ultrafine air pollution generated by cruise ships to lung cell inflammation and a reduction in antiviral defenses.
The research focused specifically on emissions at berth in the Port of Southampton, which processes around 3 million passengers annually across its 5 passenger terminals.
It is one of the busiest maritime hubs in Europe, which makes isolating specific emission sources incredibly difficult. To address this, the research team established a rigorous, long-term monitoring network measuring air quality continuously from February 2018 through March 2020.
The methodology here is vital to understand. In a busy industrial port, you have diesel trucks, cargo ships, scrap yards, and city traffic all contributing to the air quality. How do you isolate the cruise ships?
Right, so the scientists collected data across 6 distinct sites to isolate different emission profiles. 5 locations were inside the port itself: a truck gate, a scrap metal yard, a research dock, a container ship terminal, and a cruise ship terminal.
And the 6th station was positioned at the University of Southampton, roughly 5 kilometers away, to establish a baseline for background city air. Furthermore, they collected samples at the cruise terminal during both the high-traffic summer season and the low-traffic winter season.
When they analyzed the data, a distinct chemical signature emerged, didn't it? Could you break down the specific chemical makeup they found?
Yes, during the busy summer season, ultrafine particles collected near the cruise terminal were highly enriched with 3 specific metals: vanadium, nickel, and cobalt. These concentrations were significantly higher than those found at the scrapyard, the container terminal, the truck gate, or the background city air.
And crucially, these specific metals were not elevated at the cruise terminal during the winter months when cruise vessel traffic was minimal. From a chemical engineering perspective, vanadium and nickel are heavily associated with the combustion of heavy fuel oil, which has historically been the primary fuel source for large marine engines.
Right, and the researchers identified cobalt as a possible additional marker of cruise emissions. The lead researcher, Nat Easton, stated, "We see increases in concentration when the wind was coming from the direction of the cruise ships and when cruise ship presence was higher."
Once they established this localized chemical footprint, the team moved to laboratory testing to determine the biological impact of these specific particles on human lung tissue.
The researchers exposed lab-grown human lung lining cells, sourced both from the upper airways and from deep within the lungs, to the ultrafine particles collected from the port environment.
The results showed that when exposed to the particulate matter collected specifically from the cruise terminal, the cells exhibited stronger inflammatory responses.
Furthermore, the researchers observed lower activity in the cell's antiviral genes, which indicates an impaired ability to mount a defense against incoming respiratory viruses.
And through further isolation testing, they pinpointed vanadium as the primary driver of this biological response.
Yes, when they tested the metals individually, vanadium alone reproduced the inflammation and the reduction in antiviral defenses they had observed with the mixed particles. Neither nickel nor cobalt triggered the same severe response.
In the laboratory setting, human airway cells exposed to vanadium produced more copies of rhinovirus 16, a common cold virus. Even more concerning, coronavirus infection rates rose nearly 5-fold in the vanadium-treated cells compared to untreated cells.
Professor Matthew Loxam concluded that they found a, quote, clear air pollution signature coming from cruise ships, adding that exposure of cells to these particles and vanadium was both pro-inflammatory and facilitated the replication of viruses.
It is essential, however, to approach this study with scientific objectivity and explicitly outline the limitations inherent in the methodology to maintain editorial balance. The experiments utilized lab-grown human cells in a controlled artificial environment.
Right. The particle doses administered to these cells in the laboratory were significantly higher than the daily, real-world exposure levels that a human would experience breathing the ambient air in Southampton.
Additionally, the study did not measure actual epidemiological health outcomes, such as hospitalization rates or longitudinal respiratory illness trends among the residents living near the port. That distinction between concentrated laboratory exposure and real-world atmospheric dispersion is exactly where the maritime industry has pushed back.
Associated British Ports, or ABP, which owns and operates the Port of Southampton, issued a firm rebuttal. While acknowledging their ongoing emissions reduction work, ABP disputed the conclusions, stating, "Emissions like nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter are well within national air quality objective mean annual limits. We are concerned about some important aspects of the methodologies of the study and the strength of inference of some of findings that have been presented to the media."
The British Ports Association also defended the industry's ongoing investments in clean technology, specifically pointing to the expansion of shore power.
Southampton's Horizon Terminal opened in 2021 as the United Kingdom's first cruise shore power facility. Shore power is critical because a modern cruise ship can require up to 10 megawatts of power just to maintain its hotel loads while docked.
Meaning the electricity needed to run the lighting, commercial kitchens, and air conditioning.
Exactly. Without shore power, the ship must run its onboard diesel generators, leading to localized emissions at the berth. Shore power allows equipped vessels to plug directly into the local electrical grid, eliminating the need to run those engines in port.
However, the study also highlights a complex regulatory gap regarding the ships that are still burning fuel and utilizing exhaust gas cleaning systems, commonly known as scrubbers. Current maritime regulations cap fuel sulfur content at 0.1% for ships operating in specific emission control areas like Southampton.
So to comply without buying more expensive low-sulfur fuels, many vessels use scrubbers to wash the exhaust gas with water before it leaves the funnel.
The issue is that scrubbers are highly effective at capturing larger pollutants like sulfur dioxide, but they do not efficiently capture submicrometer particles.
Right, to use a structural analogy, think of a ship's scrubber system like a chain link fence. It does an excellent job of stopping a tennis ball, representing the larger sulfur particles. But if you throw a handful of fine sand at that fence, the sand goes right through the gaps.
The ultrafine particles carrying heavy metals like vanadium are so small that they pass through the scrubber systems and into the atmosphere. And as Professor Loxham noted, current air quality rules do not set specific limits for ultrafine particles or their exact chemical makeup. Taking all of this into account, we are observing an industry navigating a period of stark contrasts and complex engineering challenges. On one side of the ledger, cruise lines are commissioning the most structurally advanced, massive vesseling in maritime history, and port authorities are retrofitting shoreside infrastructure to achieve rigorous elite environmental certifications. On the other side, the fundamental technologies powering these floating cities are encountering highly specific, microscopic scientific scrutiny regarding their localized impacts. It raises a compelling question for the future of maritime infrastructure. As ships push past 230,000 tons and local air quality regulations tighten globally, we may see a near future where these massive vessels bypass traditional, densely populated city ports entirely, restricting their itineraries exclusively to remote, purpose-built offshore terminals and private resort islands, where the environmental footprint can be more tightly controlled and isolated from major population centers.
Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.